and welcome back to my channel. So it's been a little bit. I'm finally kind of like back in the groove, really psyched to make videos. I mentioned this in my little vlog, but I have been putting this particular one off for a long time because I need to wrap up the books that I've been reading, and I haven't done a wrap up since I'm pretty sure I did like a combined one from December and January, and that was the last time I did one. So yeah, it gets worse as time goes on because I still have not done it and I read more and more books. So we're doing it now. We're doing, I guess it's going to be essentially February through July. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk extensively. It's going to be pretty quick. I'm going to just do my best to kind of just give overall impressions and try to give like a mini summary, but it's going to be, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay, sorry, I had to switch to my phone because apparently my camera battery is completely dead and I've been waiting for it to charge and it's not charging. So we're just gonna go. Yeah, so sorry if this is a little bit scuffed and chaotic. I tried to look at how many books I'd read, and actually it included January, which I'm not gonna be talking about, but I read 34 books in the first half of the month. So definitely not as many as I'd hoped, but not bad. And I'm definitely been on a reading roll right now, so that's exciting. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go by month and we'll see how this goes. February was a good month, 6 books. Yeah, it's also gonna be so lopsided. You'll see. So in February, I started off with House of Flame and Shadow. Of course, it came out at the end of January. I can't believe I haven't talked about this book yet on this channel. I don't even know though also if I want to because of a lot of reasons, but we'll just say I really loved the first 2, and like a lot of people I was incredibly disappointed. I think I gave it 3.25 on Storygraph, and I think that was generous, I'm not gonna lie. I think this was just chaotic, too much was going on, but also not enough stakes. I've had an issue with that in Sarah J. Maas books lately. It's just like the stakes aren't very high. It feels predictable, and it's really disappointing because I feel like her books used to give me just such a, you know, fun comfort feeling. Yeah, so this is the 3rd in Crescent City series, and yeah, the first 2 are great. It's a very fun like urban fantasy about this girl Bryce who is kind of, especially in the first one, she's trying to solve this mystery about kind of this big like murder that happens towards the beginning of the book. I'm not saying it because if you haven't read it, it was surprising and kind of fun to read without knowing about it going into it. So yeah, anyway, this one's just super disappointing. I'll say just like really quick because I could rant about this for so long. So here like is a mini spoiler, and I'll put this timestamp. Essentially, yeah, no stakes, especially for what happens in this book. Like, I don't know, we need some things to happen. We need some death. Sarah J. Maas, like, what are we doing here? I don't know. It just has become so frustrating because I feel like that is a huge reason. I don't know, like the emotion and like loss, and just like have lost it completely because like I expect now everything to be fine all the time, and it just gives a completely different feeling. Anyway, so a couple other reasons. So many plot holes, like so many plot holes in this book, to the point where like they're not redeemable afterwards because like they happened in this book that I don't think we can fix. It was just disappointing because I think it made me realize, and a lot of other people too, that it just like, I don't think things were quite as intentional as I think we were anticipating. Everyone was like theorizing and thinking about things, and I know that's like partly on the audience and readers for theorizing, but I think that was part of the fun, was trying to be like, oh my god, how do these puzzle pieces fit together? And like they didn't in a lot of cases, and so I just feel like that was like major letdown and really disappointing. Okay, sorry, I was trying not to rant about this book and I am, so the last thing I'll just say is that, oh my god, Bryce, no, like I was so incredibly excited about this character. She was a little bit older, especially for this genre of like romantasy, fantasy heroine. She was so disappointing. Like I just wanted like the maturity and the growth. No, like truly turned into one of my least favorite leads in this book, which is crazy because she was one of my favorites before this. So yes, very disappointing, and I don't think Hunt deserves her. yeah, I don't know, all sorts of things. And it's really sad because I really, really wanted to root for her, but she just, the things she does, says, the way she acts is so immature. I'm like, fine if this was like YA, if she's like 16, but no freaking way. I'm stopping. Ooh, okay, let's talk about some positives. We had Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands, which I was so excited about, and this one did not disappoint me at all. I loved it so much. This is the second also in a series, so I won't talk too much about this one, but the first one, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia Fairies, is just like, I don't know, very cute, wholesome fantasy to me, and I just love it. Like, Emily Wilde is this scientist who studies the Fae, and so these books are all about her experiences and adventures, and I just think she's a very different main character who is somehow so relatable but also so not, and I feel like it's just done really well, and I just really love these books, and there's gonna be a third, and I'm very excited for that. So, Map of the Other Lands. We also had, oh yeah, this one I really struggled to remember. So this is Make a Scene by Mimi Grace, and it was just a fun romance, and gosh, yeah, I had a hard time kind of remembering what this one was about, but it's essentially about, what's her name? Retta, and her cousin is getting married to her ex, and so it's like this whole thing, and she needs to find someone to go with her to the wedding, so it's very fake dating trope, and she's also a baker. I just thought those were like really fun vibes, and I'm pretty sure he is a, I think, boxer, because their boxing studio moves in near the bakery. I hope this is the right one. But yeah, it was fun. I definitely not like crazy. I think I actually gave it like 3.25 as well. So fun, but honestly, contemporary romance is always a little bit lower for me. I just rarely find it to be, I don't know. So yeah, I honestly don't even remember why I rated it like this, but yeah, I think it was a fun time. Definitely recommend if you like fake dating and romance. Next we had, one of our lowest was Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn, and I think I was just so thinking about the upcoming release of Bridgerton that I really wanted to know what happened in Penelope's story, and I'm glad I read it, but I gave it a 2.25, and that's also probably generous. I just don't think it was written super well, and I always feel bad saying that, but I just like, one of the things that I really value and enjoy is good writing, and I don't know, just didn't have that to me. Yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't as full and rich as the show has been. So I guess the only reason I'm kind of glad I read it is because then I got to compare, and I definitely prefer the show. I probably won't be reading any more of them, so yeah. Okay, next we had The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida. This was the Booker Prize winner from 2022. So I've had this one for a little while, and it's just been highly anticipated for me, so I was really excited to get to it, and I think I give it 4.5, so I really liked it, but I was trying to think back on it, and I feel like I should reread it. I know it's already, I just read it this year, but I just feel like I can't remember it super well. It's about this guy, Maali Almeida, and he's a war photographer, and I believe it's around 1980s or late 80s in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and he dies, and the book just starts with him in the afterlife, and he's realized that he's been murdered, and so the whole book is like him trying to solve this murder, and there's a lot of really interesting like politics and culture and like family and stuff like that going on, and I really enjoyed this book. So we had Bride next. So this is another really highly anticipated read for me. This is Ali Hazelwood's new romantasy. So she usually does these contemporary romances, like STEM romances. I'm trying to find, they might be on my other shelf, but yeah, like The Love Hypothesis, Love on the Brain, Love Theoretically, stuff like that. And it is so tough because I feel like I realize I've been pretty harsh on Ali Hazelwood. And I'll first say that I really like this. This is definitely my favorite by her so far, but I will, it's so hard. I have such a like tough relationship with her books because I love that she's a scientist. I relate so much. There's a lot of things in her book that I relate, or all of her books that I relate to so much, like her books that have like STEM characters. But there are some things that have just like turned me off so hard on those books. Like there's some scenes, like while she does a lot of things really accurately, I think, that depict the world of academia, there are some scenes to do with the love interest that are just too cringe. Like if you are in academia and if you live out, I don't know how you read that and are like fine with it. I don't know. I just had a hard time with that, and it just, that is something that like really turned me off. And then the other thing that turned me off, and this is more just like a contemporary romance thing that I often struggle with, is kind of just some of those dynamics and main characters. I really want to be there for it, but the whole like super tiny woman and super giant man is just overused, and the fact that it's like in every single one of her books is just too much. Like I'm so down if she does it for even one or even two of them, but I just need a little bit more diversity. I just, like myself, I know a lot of other women have just been so impacted by body issues and I don't know, body image, that it's just like it was really hard for me to read and get excited about. So there's like two things that are just like I feel so strongly about, that although like a lot of the book was fine and a lot of things I really liked, I think those things just like completely overrode it for me, which is sad. And it's funny though, because like I still keep reading her books because like I keep wanting them to be great. I don't know. Anyway, I am really glad I kept with it and I picked up Bride because I really love this. I thought she did a really great job of writing romanticy. Like it had all this like really great tension. It was very like enemies to lovers and just had everything, I don't know, done super well. So essentially it's about this girl, Misery, or this vampire Misery. And it takes place in this world that's like modern. It's kind of also like urban fantasy. So there's humans, there's werewolves, and there's vampires. And Misery is a vampire, but she's kind of an outcast in the vampire society. But of course her family is very powerful, got a lot of tropes, and she's essentially gonna help like uphold an alliance with the werewolves. So there's a lot with politics between the humans, werewolves, and vampires in this book. And essentially she goes and she's sent to marry the alpha of the werewolves, and as like this sort of alliance. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm super not doing a great job of being concise. Okay, so next we have March. In March, I read 5 books. We have Raiders of the Lost Heart by Jo Segura, and I found this at Lovebound Library in Salt Lake City, which is such a cute little new romance bookstore. I was opening it because they had this like, you probably can't see it, but they have one of those like little inlays from the bookshop. Anyway, if you're ever in Salt Lake, definitely visit Lovebound and the Legendarium, my like favorite bookstores, like some of my favorite bookstores ever, honestly. So what intrigued me about this one is, and I know I'm over here like griping about contemporary romance and reading all these contemporary romances, but I have a couple that were like surprisingly I really enjoyed, and this is one of them. This is about this archaeologist, Corey, and she has this kind of this academic rival that she has always kind of been competing with. We don't really know their entire history, but she gets invited on this dig and he's there, and so begins this whole story. Yeah, relationship, but also then like discovering things, and it's just like really fun. I had a really fun time with this on the academic side. I think the only reason I think I gave this one a 4.5, which is really high for me for contemporary romance, and I think the only reason I like knocked them off is also just how, I don't know, I wasn't totally satisfied by some of the academic related issues. I don't know if that's a great, but like some of their rivalry and backstory. Yeah, I feel like the things that I was kind of frustrated by were kind of towards the end, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I think it's super worth reading and really loved it. Oh, I will say this is a very like, has kind of like Indiana Jones vibes, and that was really fun. So, and different from a lot of things that I've read. Next we have The Book Jumper, and this, I'm trying to even remember what this was about. Amy, that's right. She is a child, and they go back to her home, and like her mother's home. They've been living away, and it's on this island. It's called Stormsay, and so I think it's like her mom like doesn't want her involved in this community too much, but at first it's like kind of unclear why. And this family has this whole backstory with book jumping and books, and she like eventually lets her grandmother, the mom, like lets her mother teach her daughter about this and like let her into this community more. And it has to do, it's like this adventure to do with this book jumping practice where they like literally jump into books, and I find it really fun. Yeah, I feel like it could have been like a little fleshed out and a little bit longer. I think I give it a 3.5, but overall really enjoyed it. So yeah, I realize I've gone from like not really rating books on these videos to like rating all of them, but part of that is I think for just this video because I remember very little from all these, so I'm gonna give the rating, but I won't always do that. So next we have The Deal by Elle Kennedy, and here goes again with me reading contemporary romance. And I had a friend who's like who was very into hockey romance, especially last winter and spring, and I had heard really good things about The Deal. I thought it was decent, 3.75. I think she like so this main character Hannah, and I'm pretty sure she ends up tutoring this hockey, oh maybe it's the captain, yeah, the captain of the hockey team. And yeah, things go from there. I thought it was fun. It was kind of a quick read for me, and I don't remember anything else. I'm so sorry. Next, we have Every Heart a Doorway. I finally got around to starting the Seanan McGuire series, Wayward Children. I am very glad I started it. It's such a cool concept. Honestly, one of the most creative series that I've ever read. So far I've read 4, so I'll talk all about those a little bit. And I've had varying degrees of enjoyment and rating on all of them, but I really enjoyed it. It's essentially kind of all has to do with this house. Yeah, this like house slash school-ish that like takes down these children that have been to other worlds and have come back. And it's all centered around this concept that like as a kid, these like doors will open up at random for children, and children can go through them, and sometimes they'll like find this world that they're like meant to be a part of that like fits really well with them. And anyway, really cool concept. And each one is, some of them are about a group of them or things that are happening at the school, and then other stories are about like one particular character's kind of background. So yeah, really enjoyed. Started with the first one, Every Heart a Doorway, and I read the second one too. So this has been my favorite so far. I really like this one. I just think it, I don't know, so cool. So highly recommend this series. They're all really short too, and just like easy to read, but so interesting and really great, really well done. So now we have our April books. I read 4 books in April, so things are starting to kind of dwindle. Okay, we're trying to go quicker here. So we also have part of a series, Ruthless Vows. This is the second, The Divine Rivals, duology. I love this series. It's just like, it's definitely some of the best like YA that I read in a really long time, and I've struggled with YA. And I just love this one. It was so freaking good. I highly recommend Divine Rivals. It is about these 2 characters who are like writing on this typewriter back and forth to each other. And it's this magical world, but I will say, I think it's like good kind of to know this going into it, that the first one, the magical side of it is not super strong. Like they live in this like magical world, and it's kind of talked about, but it's not really it's more talked about and not like shown a ton. I think it was shown a lot more in this one, and I love that. So highly recommend this series. So next we have That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. And I'm so sad I didn't really love this one. I just felt like I got kind of bored of it, and it felt a little bit flat for me. But it's essentially about, oh my gosh, I don't know her name either. Oh, Fallon. Yeah. No, that's the demon. Love this for me. I'm, you know, killing it. I don't remember her name. Oh, I think I have it on Kindle though. Anyway, it's about this girl, and she lives on this spice farm with her family, and she meets this demon, or she saves this demon, and this like leads to this like whole adventure in this world for them. And it's just, I thought there was such potential, but I don't know why. I just found it, I don't know, maybe the pacing for me just was like not quite right, and I like really couldn't get into it enough. And I was really surprised, because usually books like this I feel like I'd be, you know, speeding through. But yeah, so there's that. We also in April had Scattered All Over the Earth by Yoko Tawada, and this I was so excited about. I still really enjoyed it, but I will say it didn't quite live up to, I think, my expectation. Maybe a little bit my own fault here, but it's essentially this concept, it's this futuristic, kind of dystopian future, but it's pretty subtle, I will say. And essentially in this future, the concept of certain like countries disappears, and there's just like kind of remnants left over. So Japan is kind of remembered as the land of sushi, and not many people know about it or like have any recollection of a lot of things to do with it. So it is mostly about Haruko, who I think was from Japan, and ends up meeting kind of some of these other people who they kind of all meet and come together kind of around this idea and like kind of like vague memories of these like disappearing countries that they kind of want to figure out more and find out what's going on. So yeah, I thought it was overall really interesting concept and interesting to read, but it's not super plot strong to me. Like, it's a little bit more about the vibes and kind of these like relationships, and kind of a bit just more mundane than I had expected. But one more in April was Wayward by Chuck Wendig, and this is the second in a series, so I won't give too much away in this one. The first one is Wanderers, and I think this is just a duology. This came out in 2022. The first one came out, I believe it was 2019, right before the pandemic. And when I read this one, I actually only read it last year, I think, but I was really kind of blown away by it because it was so spot on with a lot of like our culture and COVID and stuff that's been going on. So I just thought it was crazy that it came out right before 2020. And I think it's really interesting. It's this like kind of end of the world, very much about like US culture and politics, and I feel like a lot of us can very much like relate to certain things going on, like certain extreme politics and a lot of like racism and stuff like that, and that kind of is talked about in a really interesting way. Yeah, anyway, the whole thing in the first one is that these like people just start getting up and like walking out of their houses, and they just keep walking and keep going, and they become what's called a herd, and they have like these family members or friends who end up like walking with them and kind of, I think they're called shepherds, guarding them as they go. But we don't really know what's going on or why, so we follow a couple of characters, one who is a scientist who's like trying to figure out what's going on. And this one, completely different vibes. I don't want to say much because the end of Wanderers is like would be very spoilery. And yeah, I was surprised. I had no idea what the second one would be about. It's like both of them are very long, but I really love this. Like, I thought it was, I think, better than the first one in my opinion. So really enjoyed that. Okay, SPQR was the next book that I read, and this was in May. And this was the ancient history of Rome, and I read this because we were in Italy. And I highly recommend doing that because I think it's a great way, like a really interesting and informative experience, I think, to like read a book while you're in that country and learn about it. But I will say, I really expected this book to be a little bit more accessible and engaging, and I'm not gonna lie, I just found the timeline to just not work for me. Like, I thought it was really straightforward, and I know history is tough because you gotta reference a lot of different things, but I felt like we were like all over the place all the time. Like, there was kind of a vague sense of like early and then continuing on, but I just felt like we were jumping around too much. I just felt like I was like losing things all the time. So it's a little bit of a bummer because that's like one of the very few nonfictions I've read this year so far. Ooh, very exciting. Then the next was The Neighbor Favor, and this is by Kristina Forrest. And I had like no expectation. Again, contemporary romance, I was like, but I don't know. Sometimes I just like enjoy the experience, I guess. I don't know. This is like one of my highest rated contemporary romance. I gave it a 4.5. And okay, sorry, I was like forgetting this one and now it's all coming back to me and I'm remembering it. Oh, that was such a fun, such a cool concept. So there's this character Lily and she loves to read, so it's like very fun and relatable. And she really wants to be a children's book editor. She's very into like the book world, and she has this book that is like an escapist fantasy book for her. And she starts like corresponding with the author, and the book is like kind of obscure, I think, and like not super well known, but they start talking over email, and it's just, I really love this one. Like, this is definitely one of my favorites. Came out of nowhere for me, and I just had a really great time. Next, we read in May, I read Beneath the Sugar Sky, which is the third in the Wayward children's series. This was so far my least favorite. I just like didn't totally vibe or like get into the story as much as I think the others. Still think the concept really is very cool and creative. Completely stand by that. Like, this one was very creative and interesting. I just did not find myself quite as sucked into this one, but I'm really glad I read it because I want to read them all. And again, just so creative and interesting. So literally the only book I read in June, so this is the low point of my reading this year, was The Last Animal. And I don't mean that low point as in like the worst book. I just mean like I wasn't really reading that much. I was trying to write my dissertation and traveling a ton. So I read one book. And it took me a really long time to read this like really tiny book, but I got it. My dad got it for me actually while I was in Colorado in the end of May, and I was really intrigued by the premise of this. It was also about an academic. It's about, she's a graduate student and she has two children. They're kind of preteens, and her husband, their father, passed away, and it's kind of about their lives since then and just kind of their struggles. The children go with their mom on some of her like field work, and on one of towards the beginning, they discover this baby mammoth in Siberia, and it kind of begins this whole line of adventures. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought that the relationships were really interesting. I would say this book is definitely more about the relationships between the two sisters and between their mom, and like the struggles of growing up and having a kind of slightly different upbringing. They're like moving around all the time and they have to rely on each other more. And I thought it was really interesting. I also, the depiction of like the preteen years and mindset was so, I think, really well done in this. And I really enjoyed that perspective and those like relationships with the mom, because I think it told from the perspective of the two girls, but also told more about their mother. And it just felt like pretty well balanced to me and really interesting. And there were some really interesting sides of like the science to it. I think the only reason it didn't quite hit as hard for me was that I think like the plot side of it and the science side of it felt very like it wanted to be the main plot, but it was subplot. And that was kind of a little bit confusing to me. It was like kind of figuring that out. Okay, June. I realize I'm gonna have to film this in two parts. I was really hoping to get this up tonight, but it's gonna have to be tomorrow morning. We have something tonight, so we really have to go. But I'm gonna talk about the July books in a little bit. So, okay, it's the next day. So, sorry if things are a little bit different. I did put this little dress back on just for continuity's sake, but yes, July books is what I have not gotten to yet, and very excited to talk about these. I'm also going to keep this short because I know how long this video is going to be, but I do have a video coming out very soon that was like reading all of my like very highly anticipated reads, and a lot of the July books are in there, so I'm also like not going to talk about them quite as much, even though they're a little bit more fresh in my memory. So first we have The Honey Witch, and oh my gosh, I thought this was so cute. It is about Marigold, and it's kind of like this historical fantasy, like Regency era, Bridgerton feel in the very beginning, because there's a lot of talk of like the marriage mart and like her getting married, and her mom wants her to, go like live that life. But she definitely doesn't want to do that, and she keeps kind of talking about her grandmother and how much she misses her grandmother in this island, the island of Innisfree, and she just has these memories that she keeps thinking about. Her grandmother comes and is like wants to bring her back. Doesn't really say a ton about exactly why, her mom is really opposed to it. She ends up going and living on this island and beginning her adventures as a honey witch. I really loved it. It was just so like wholesome, cute. I just love the vibes of the island and like the magic and the honey. I thought it was really cool. But yeah, just beautiful. So highly enjoyed. I will say I can see why people didn't love this, and just like the plot side of it is not that strong. So, and it kind of like really, the pacing is a little funny. I feel like at the end, it's like stuff just picks up really fast. And again, I really like this. I would say if you liked like Legends and Lattes and like slightly cozier vibes, this has like a little more action than that, but like definitely slower. If you like Bridgerton, but like a fantasy kind of mix, I would say you should definitely read The Honey Witch. I thought it was very cute and just like a wholesome read, like something that was so great to just like be in that world. Like I just wanted to be there all the time. So next we had Hear the Wind Sing and Pinball 1973. So these were Haruki Murakami's first two books, and these are also the first two in the Rat series. Gosh, these are kind of hard to explain. I feel like they are, I was gonna say classically Murakami, but I could very easily tell that these were his first books, right? So a lot of the like ideas and like ways of writing, I could kind of see the beginnings of, which I thought was actually really cool to read. So if you like Murakami's writing, I think this is really fun to read. I would definitely not start with this if you've never read Haruki Murakami. Yeah, I feel like I would start with something later. After Dark is my favorite. But there are still some like really cringe women moments. I've talked about this before on my channel about Haruki Murakami and writing women, and I have a really hard time with that because I really love his writing, and I've never like clicked so much with like the way he wrote. And I think I actually read After Dark first, and there wasn't a lot of like the negative stuff in that, and then since then I like learned a lot about it, but I still want to read a lot of his works for now. And I did enjoy the writing of these. Okay, yeah, so I think a lot of both of these actually are kind of about our narrator and then the rat and their conversations at this bar. Kind of just like life and some of the women that they come in contact with and the owner of the bar, and then Pinball kind of is after this, and the main character is like kind of obsession with pinball in this certain pinball game. All right, so Cloud Atlas is next, and if you watched my vlog that's going to come out, this is not the copy that I read from. I for some reason just cannot find that anywhere. I really love the movie of Cloud Atlas, and I got this book, and then after I got this I discovered there was another cover, and I actually think I found the one with the other cover in a book box, so I couldn't help, like one of the little free libraries, so I couldn't help but pick it up. And I'm a little bit bummed that I can't find it right now, but I still happen to have this copy. Yeah, so I thought I would hold this. But Cloud Atlas is just this like really fascinating and interesting book that spans, I think it's 6 storylines throughout time. I think the earliest one, in fact in the book, I'm not sure it actually ever says the year in the first one. Let's look. No, it just says like the month and the day, and I think though it's maybe 17 or 1800s, could be wrong, could be 1600s, and it's this journals of this guy traveling on this boat, and then the other stories are about other characters at other points in time, and each of the stories has kind of like this mystery within the story itself, but then all the stories also connect, and I like love that kind of a story. Yeah, so I think the second story is maybe like early 1900s. I'm trying to think of all the characters. Yeah, there's the one in like the 70s. There's also one kind of in our present day, like early 2000s. And then there's 2 in future timelines. One's like very, very distant future. Actually, I mean, both are pretty distant, but just so interesting how they all connect. And like, I love that kind of thing that spans time and connects characters and like really thinks about kind of connection and the meaning of life and what it means to be human. So Next is The Darkness Within Us. I have a lot of opinions on it. I have my little notes here. This, first of all, I got this from Fairy Loot, and it's beautiful, very gorgeous edition. I finally got off the waitlist and was very excited about that. I've been having a really awesome time with Fairy Loot. I haven't done a book subscription in a little while. It's just been really fun. But I didn't know, because of that, I didn't know that this is actually a second in kind of a series. Now, to be fair to Fairy Loot, you don't technically have to read the first one. So like that was kind of fine, but I had no idea at any point that this was part of a series. So I just think that's like good information going into this, because my like gripes with the first, like the very beginning of this book, I think potentially could be solved by reading the first one. I don't know for sure, but I just want to give that kind of like disclaimer, because it's possible that some things would be answered in the first book, which is about the sister to the main character in this book. I forget her name. Just cannot remember anyone's name for the life of me. Oh yeah. Yeah, the end papers are really pretty. This is about Chrysantha. That's right, Chrysantha. And her sister's name is Alessandra. So that's the one that the first book is about. And she does show up in this, so I'm sure it's also more enjoyable reading experience if you read the first one. So essentially, Chrysantha has kind of played this like head in the clouds character for a while. And this is definitely like historical fantasy romance. And she played this like really kind of like, I don't know, airhead woman, and was like married to this guy who's like really, really wealthy, but he was really old and like about to die. So in the very beginning of the book, you kind of like learn a little bit about that backstory. And this is like a mini spoiler, but it happens right in the beginning. Yeah, it is a mini spoiler. So if you don't want any spoilers, just like skip ahead like 10 seconds, but essentially she kills him. And then the rest of the book continues his his son, his grandson, that's how old he is. His grandson shows up and is like ready to take his inheritance essentially. And she like married him and like planned this whole thing out with the intention of like this entire thing happening, except she didn't know, like she thought there was no heirs. Yeah, so that's kind of like the premise of this book. And gosh, I feel like I just had so many issues with this. So sorry, I'm gonna look at my notes a little bit, but I'm gonna start with the beginning of this book. So that intro part where she's like thinking about the past and kind of explaining a lot, it's 95% telling, 0 showing, and like I get it because it's kind of like catching us up on all this stuff, which is maybe why if I read the first one, maybe some stuff would be there, but I'm not sure because this is like her story. I'm not sure how much she's talked about in the other one, and I just like, yeah. So to me, like the writing was really poor in the beginning. I'm so sorry. I really hate saying that because like I know authors put a lot of work into these, and I enjoy writing myself, and I'm sure all my stuff is not good. So just, I don't know. Yeah, I feel bad saying that. It just like, I am a little bit, like good writing is definitely something that like I prioritize and really enjoy in books. And like, I really struggled in this one, especially in the first quarter. I just thought it was really not great. I actually even have, let's see what this was. Oh, I remember this quote. It also leads into some of my other issues. Okay, so she's talking about like wearing makeup and putting makeup on. And she's like, I normally don't bother with powders. I don't need them. And with them, I often cause accidents in the street. This just like set me up for like kind of despising this character. And it's YA. So I usually try to give YA books a little bit more grace because I know that the characters are young. They're still learning. They can be kind of arrogant. And yeah, I don't know. But just like a lot of this premise was based on the idea of like this character and her like airheadedness and like playing dumb, but then being like really smart behind it. And I just like did not see that with her. So I mean, I get the concept, it's kind of fun, but the thing that was not showing up to me was like I didn't actually see her like doing things that like would show that she's smart. Aside from the fact that she keeps saying that like, oh, she planned all this, there's like nothing that leads me to believe that. And instead it feels like she's just really cold and calculating, and she has this really terrible relationship with her sister and talks really negatively about her, which to me, especially the things she was thinking and saying, like really set her up for this really toxic feminist viewpoint. And that made me really sad, like the situation with her sister. And like I really that was one thing I just like could not get over. There's also stuff with like the people who are working in the house. So like the maids and cooks and people, like she really, the way she thinks makes me feel like she really doesn't care about any of those people. She's just doing this so like she has them on her side, especially like for the future. But like there are parts where she'll like think or say, or I feel like the author was trying to come across as like she cares so much about these people. But then I was like, her actions and thoughts did not match that at all. So like I really had a hard time being sympathetic towards her because she just had very few redeeming qualities to me. And the fact that like this entire premise behind it, like her entire, this is like all a scam, is like she's trying to just like get the money and power. And I get that like part of why this was written is like, I feel like especially in this like historical setting, like women didn't have a lot of power and she's trying to find it for herself. I love that idea. I just, to me, was just really not executed well for my liking, I guess, in this book. I had such a hard time with her, and I had such a hard time with the concept being this whole like women power thing, but then her having this really toxic relationship with her sister and really negative views that I don't feel like were resolved enough for it to like actually have that like punch and that meaning behind it, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was just really disappointing. I just also felt like the main character was so conceited and like, I don't know, she acted so young, and I felt like she was always like throwing tantrums, and like this relationship with the love interest, there was so much potential there. And I actually like there was a certain like the middle part of this book, so like I don't know, like right here in the middle, I actually enjoyed, and I was like speeding through it and really interested. But just like the thing that really got me about their relationship is I feel like she would think and talk about how much like better and older she was and like more mature than the love interest, and like that is not what we as the readers see at all. I feel like she was constantly throwing tantrums and like being a child, and yes, I don't know, it just was like really frustrating to me because like I really hate when like this is how we're showing like these strong female characters, because I don't think it like helps with a lot of like building up women and like having this like really positive view. I know it's like fantasy and fiction, but I don't love that in my reading experience. So yeah, sorry for the negative review. I'm gonna try to do this for books. If you like YA romance with like fun tension, very like enemies to lovers kind of vibes and that kind of thing, yeah, you like really enjoy that and kind of can get over a lot of things that I mentioned, then I think you'd really like this. And again, there were redeeming parts. There's like the middle section. I enjoyed it. So, it's the darkness within us. Piranesi. This was a very highly anticipated book for me. This is my first Susanna Clarke. I don't know how to describe this one, and from everything I've seen online and things I've watched, it seems like I probably should not say too much about this because I don't want to, I think going into it without knowing anything is good, but I'm still kind of on my like soapbox about this one and just like warning that it's like definitely darker and not as like whimsical as I was expecting it to be. So yes, it's essentially about this man who is in this labyrinth in this other world trying to figure out what's going on. That is kind of the most I'll say. I really enjoyed it, but again, it was just like a little bit darker than I was expecting it to be. Okay, next was In an Absent Dream by Shehan McGuire, and this is the fourth in the Wayward Children series. And I am going to say a little about the premise for this one. I haven't really talked too much about the others because it's really not spoilery to any of them. And these can all of them can technically stand alone. I think it's like definitely more fun if you read them in order because some of the characters are reoccurring. Yeah, this is about this character who goes through this door, like has like a pretty normal life, goes through this door to this goblin market world with all these like really specific rules. They like essentially cannot ask questions, or asking questions is like really dangerous, and it's like part of how they like exchange things in this world. And so she goes into it and has these adventures, and yes, I really liked it. I would say this is probably my second favorite. The second one was my first so far, and then I really liked this one as well. I thought it was really good. Last but certainly not least is the fifth season, and I also read the second one in the series, The Obelisk Gate, in July. And I have finished the series, and I just freaking love the series. One of my new favorite fantasy series. It's this fantasy like post-apocalyptic book. Essentially, in this world, there are these like seasons where the world kind of like goes into this kind of disastrous state where there's a lot of environmental disasters and it's really hard to survive. It's a really dangerous world. It's also in this world where there are these origins and they can like move the earth. They have powers kind of connected to the earth and rock, and they're very much looked down upon in society, and people think they're really dangerous. Not even looked down upon. They're essentially like found out. People kill them. People, when they're children, like take them elsewhere. And the chapters, or some of the chapters in this book, are in second person, which I really loved. I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about that, but I really liked it. And you are essentially this character, and she is an origin, and so you kind of see the world through her eyes and what happens as things are going into chaos. And yeah, I really liked it. I will also say this series is also pretty dark, so if you're looking for like light fantasy, this is not that, but I just feel like it was fantastically written, some of the best writing I've read, and just did a really great job. Just like such unique world and system, but also still played a lot into issues like from our society and our world. Really, really highly enjoyed the 5th season. So with that, this video is so long, but thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Okay.